pleasure to be here. I'll try to get you interested in ISMAR, the academic conference on mixed and augmented reality. But maybe first I should let you a little bit about me. So I come from Graz, Austria, where I'm heading an augmented reality research group at Graz University of Technology. And I've actually been doing augmented reality research for quite a long time. It's really 20 years now, sometimes I can't believe myself even. I've done quite a few things in augmented reality, including the first collaborative augmented reality system as early as 1996. That would actually be 20 years now. Can have a little celebration there. And later, I was lucky enough to work on the first truly mobile augmented reality systems. Who remembers the days when we had PDAs, personal digital assistants? It's a concept that has now been consumed by the smartphone era. But we actually got to run a full 3D augmented reality pipeline on just the Dell Axiom PDA in 2003. And here comes the little shameless plug that I'm allowed to do here. I have published a book this year together with my co-author Tobias Höllerer from UC Santa Barbara on the principles of augmented reality with Edison Wesley Professional. I think some of the books are on display at the registration desk. Or you go to the website w3augmentedrealitybook.org. Without exaggerating, this is the only serious technical book about augmented reality. If you want to learn the technical foundations, I can certainly recommend it. And if you're an educator, it also comes with teaching materials, so maybe you want to check that out. But enough about that. I have also a long-standing industrial collaboration with Qualcomm and more recently with Vectory, for example. The Euphoria product is related to work that happened in my lab. On the other hand, since I'm a professor, I'm a long-term supporter of the ISMAR academic conference. And this is the main topic today, to get you interested in the academic research that is going on here. The IEEE International Symposium on Mixed and Augmented Reality has also existed for quite some time, since 1998, and this is where all the novel findings in technology are being published, which later, hopefully, make it into industrial software products. And unfortunately, it turns out there's relatively little, let's say, crosstalk or cross-fertilization between the industrial augmented reality community and the academic augmented reality research community. And that hurts me a bit because I'm observing rediscovery of the wheel to some extent, but also really good ideas from academia that never get picked up, even despite the big hype and the willingness to invest in startups and so forth. It would be much better if we talked more to each other. And so I'm trying to get that started. I want to make you aware of ISMAR. It happened in Mexico actually this year, just last month in September in Merida. Not only is that a beautiful place as the pictures are just suggesting, but also it was a really exciting conference with a very intense technical program. And I think many of the findings that were presented there would be good additions to the work that is being done here, good addition to software products, to integration efforts, and so on. And on the other hand, I think many of you are doing work that would be also worth publishing in an academic venue. So this is why I'm trying to start this process of getting to know each other a little more. And I'll talk about the various directions in technology in mixed reality, augmented reality, and give you a few examples here about displays, about computer vision, about computer graphics, about human-computer interaction. It all happens in the academic conference. It certainly happens at the more industrial-oriented conference such as AWE here. And maybe you can pick up some ideas, maybe you get an appetite to read some of the technical papers, put them into your own software development. I mean, one of the nice things about academic conferences is that if these things are published, they are basically free for your access. You don't get the software for free necessarily. Sometimes even you do get some open source software, but certainly you get the ideas for free. And they can accelerate the technical implementation and improve the quality. For the remainder of the time, I'll just review some of my personal favorites from the conference, just to give you some ideas of what is happening there. And I've picked some where you probably will see that they could be adopted by technology companies immediately in the context of what is happening here at AWE. So there are the typical, areas of augmented reality, be it graphics, display, tracking, visualization, registration, and so on. I'll start with the very foundational topic of tracking, and I would say there are two current directions going on right now. One is, given some standard hardware such as, let's say, a smartphone or maybe a Google Tango tablet or something like that, I want better tracking results, better exploiting the standard hardware. Incorporating SLAM technology, simultaneous localization and mapping is certainly one of the must-haves in that area now. The other thing that I'm observing is that may not be good enough, in particular for the most interesting environments, let's say dark, gritty industrial environments. With just standard hardware, you have a very, very hard time being successful in delivering the tracking performance that you want. New hardware, or rather modified, extended hardware may become interesting. And this is actually what the best paper award was given at ISMAR 2016 on a paper on building a cluster out of scanline cameras. And the idea is very simple and unique. Most of the cameras that we still have a rolling shutter. That's actually considered an artifact. You don't want to get images where the rolling shutter sort of warps your image from scan line to scan line. You would rather not have that. But you can also interpret a rolling shutter camera as an array of temporarily triggered line cameras, because every line will have a unique orientation in space as you're moving the camera while the picture is going. So what this team from UNC Chapel Hill, Babatan and Fram did is they built a cluster of 5 times GoPro stereo cameras mounted on a helmet. This is what you see in the lower left corner. So these give you lots of image data, and they interpret that as lots of scan lines, lots of stereo scan lines that come in. And basically, if you take all this information together, you get around or over 50,000 scan lines per second coming in continuously, which can be used for stereo matching both in space between the stereo pairs, but also in time, from one position of the camera to the next. And because the motion between in one divided by 50,000 is a very, very small motion, you have a very linear behavior in how the image lines change there, and the tracking becomes very easy. And you can feed it into a big continuous optimization program. And because of this high speed, you get very accurate tracking results where processing the full frames but with higher latency will never allow you to do that sort of thing. They can't do it in a, they really built the GoPro rig, but of course they can only read out the data, store it, and do the processing offline in the batch mode right now. But you could see how a camera can be modified to stream out the scan lines directly. And as soon as that hardware existed, this kind of tracking could become popular. So this was the best paper award. And the runner-up comes from the area of displays, where we are also seeing tremendous improvements going on all the time. Head-mounted displays are now everywhere, but are they really good enough? Well, kind of. I would say they are great compared to last year's and outstanding compared to the displays that I tried 5 years ago. But there's still a lot of, in particular, optical limitations that are not being addressed by the vendors now, because it's very hard, and also because it requires hardware-software co-design. If you show content on a see-through display or an optical see-through display, the content needs to be adaptive with respect to what you're seeing in the world, because you're also seeing the world at the same time. And nothing in the optical system of a head-mounted display will typically be linear, which is the general assumption if we're using a pinhole camera model in the regular LCD matrix shape and so on. So one of the things, for example, that is absolutely not addressed under normal circumstances is blur and chromatic aberration errors in the viewing of a see-through display. And this is where a group around TU Munich and also from Japan was investigating a novel idea how to measure the blur that occurs in optical see-through head-mounted displays. And that would be the first step towards compensating for the blur in the optical see-through displays. So what they did is they put a camera, controlled motorized camera inside a head-mounted display, and they measured what kind of view you get. And here you see the same noise pattern shown on the screen from different positions, viewed from different positions and angles inside the head-mounted display, but the same area of the screen. And you see that the blur and chromaticity errors vary significantly across these viewing directions. And if you sample all these views, you end up with something like a light field. You know, you can describe this as a four-dimensional image array. You get a different image for every position and every viewing direction inside the head-mounted display. So that's 2 + 2 degrees of freedom. And now we can try to characterize the blur that happens there, for example, in the form of a point spread function. So what happens to a dot if I display it? What do I actually see? If we model that correctly, you can see here, these are the estimated point spread functions. They get very nice results with respect to what the camera is actually seeing, even for novel views and novel image content. And as soon as you have that information, you could, for example, let's say a trivial strategy would be apply a uniform blur. When it's already blurred, you don't have to blur anymore, but everywhere else you can sort of adjust the image content or even do something more refined in order to compensate for these blur effects. In augmented reality, apart from the input, the tracking, and the output, the display, of course, we always have trends, we always have important trends that concern the third pillar, that is the registration. In particular, registration in dynamic environments is really, really important. Now, this is oftentimes assumed to be given. If you have modeled the entire world and your tracking is perfect, then by definition your registration will be trivial. But in reality, that's just not the case. You have moving artifacts in your environment. In particular, you will have a moving user and also moving objects. So I'll start with the moving user, and there were two interesting works. One is the user in a moving vehicle, so that points us towards driver assistance systems. I guess it was briefly mentioned in the keynote this morning from DACRI that automotive will be another important sector where augmented reality can be deployed. But then the typical example is show something in the windshield like the speed. Yeah, okay, I can buy that in a commercial BMW today. So how about this? If a car is driving in front of you, obviously you can't see through the car. Now there's a concept called diminished reality, sort of the cousin of augmented reality, where you're removing something from a person's field of view. And this is exactly what this team from Korea, from KAIST, is doing. They put stereo cameras in the front car and a wireless transmission. So the idea would be that in reality, like this would be a spontaneous networking where you get this video stream because you're close to that car. And then you can see through that car, at least on a little display in your cockpit of your car. And obviously, seeing through the car allows you to anticipate any dangers that lie ahead, like, I don't know, pedestrians or deer crossing the road or some other situations, much more early on. And that's certainly a mode that everybody would want to have. You would want to be able to make objects in your environment transparent to get more information. Oh, and by the way, the little black spot on the bottom of the video inset. This is actually where the camera in the front car can't see. This is where the wheels of the front car touch the ground, and you don't get any video information there. But the forward-looking part of the camera is a very essential kind of contribution. Another direction in registration is when we capture the motion of a user and we do something with it. And we're also seeing a lot of virtual reality ideas around here. There's a strong fusion going on between augmented reality and virtual reality now. And this paper points in this direction, again from work from Korea, where they extract motion from a human user, just with Kinect skeleton tracking, and then modify it so that it looks plausible on an avatar. So what you see here is that this person is sitting down or standing up in a chair. And of course there are certain important physiological constraints there, like your behind must touch the seat of the chair, and you cannot fall over, like your center of gravity must be somehow below you, your body. And this is being retargeted to a different chair in a different environment. So if you think about telepresence applications, I think you can immediately see how this kind of technology can become important, because in the end you're interested in a plausible presentation. You're not, if you want to see the avatar of your friend inside your own living room, and you have a chair there, and you want your friend to virtually sit down in that chair, you don't want your friend to sit down next to the chair, or halfway displaced and appearing to fall off the chair. You want a plausible representation, unless you want to, I don't know, judge the seating posture of your friend, which is probably not what you want. So this is technology that is helpful there. And the third example for registration is tracking dynamic objects for correct occlusion contours. A lot of the work is now assuming that you have an RGBD sensor such as a Kinect available. The reason is that unless you have a stationary stereoscopic setup, scanning the environment will only be feasible with a depth sensor if you want immediate results. Otherwise you always have to establish a baseline and walk around a bit, which is not good for dynamic environments. So let's assume we have an RGBD sensor. Then you would assume that the pixels in the RGB and in the D channels give you corresponding information. Maybe I'll let that run again. But in fact they don't. You see there's lots of artifacts there. Because the depth sensor is actually a separate camera that is slightly displaced and it has some noise and some problems, so all of that doesn't work fine. But you can do some post-processing that precisely registers the RGB and the D component in image space and refines the depths basically to match what the camera is seeing, and then you can use that for much enhanced occlusion effects in the image, as can be seen here. So you see that these pixel errors do not occur in the refined version here. And this is just what you want. This is basically a drop-in technology if you have any kind of RGBD augmented reality system that will make it higher quality. Moving on to graphics. Graphics, well, I would argue there are actually two topics. There's graphics and visualization. Graphics is about making the images nice. Visualization is about making the images comprehensible, showing information to people. I did not bring any, I think the visualization topic is extremely important and interesting, but I didn't bring any examples from this ISMAR conference here. So I'll just talk about 2 or 3 problems in graphics. We can do outstanding graphics. You just have to go to the movies to see that. It's all photorealistic, but it's all virtual. It's not done in real time and with a large budget. In augmented reality, you want to do photorealistic common illumination in real time with only minimal hardware and with minimal preparation. And that is much harder to achieve. So this is what these works are about. One direction is reflections. What you see here is a work from Technische Universität Ilmenau, which is used RGBD input, and then what they synthesize are plausible reflections from only a single RGBD image. So there's no reconstruction behind that. They do a filtering of the depth channel so they can get nice glossy reflections, but then the specular reflections, like here, run that. This is the specular, so this is a virtual mirror that is introduced in the scene here. The specular part of the reflection is produced by screen space raycasting. So just the depth image that you get from the scene at once, and also the RGB part are used to synthesize plausible reflections. They will not be physically accurate, but it doesn't matter, at least the impression of, let's say, a specular reflection is preserved here. The next work is about lighting and relighting. This is actually work from my own group, so I'm kind of resisting the temptation here to elaborate a great deal about that. What we're doing is we are also using RGBD input, and we're extracting all components of the scene simultaneously. We're extracting geometry, incident lighting, and materials with kind of a funk surface model with glossiness from this scene. And here you see, so maybe I jump back to the part where you see the comparison of the video and the rendering. So for example, we have extracted the fruits here and they look fairly realistic. But then we can also go and modify the scene. So these are virtual fruits now actually, where we have replaced the real fruits with the virtual fruits. And on a casual look, you wouldn't be able to tell even. And now you see we have a virtual sphere in there that matches the lighting of the real fruits. Yeah? So this was extracted in near real time from this kind of scene with very casual input. So I think this is a very useful technique to make more realistic augmented reality experiences. If you want to go to virtual reality, there's also interesting stuff going on. So maybe the first interesting note about this paper is that it is co-authored by somebody from Google and somebody from Microsoft. Doesn't happen too often, I guess. But what they are doing is they are scanning the room or scanning some environment, and then they are giving it a theme for immersive virtual reality. Because the problem with this room-size virtual reality that everybody's talking about now is, are you going to clean out your living room entirely to walk around? Well, probably no. Yeah? So what's happening right now, if you buy an HTC Vive, is you measure everything in your room, and then it puts up this warning as soon as you're approaching the dining table or the sofa and tells you don't go there. Well, it would be much nicer if you could actually go there, and if your living room was styled to be, let's say, a tavern in a medieval castle or some kind of sci-fi spaceship cantina, or some other place where you want to be. And this is what they are doing here. So they have some procedural decorations, and they are turning your real environment into a virtual environment for use with an immersive VR system. And it can actually be extended. This is partially from the same authors, about to interact with the environment. So here you have lots of tracked objects, and they're trying this out with children. And you see how these little toy cubes now become part of a game, and the game is actually a virtual game where you can not only watch the objects but also move them around to give you some kind of interaction. So I don't know what happens if this guy is shaking it, but okay, now it's like a SimCity. You put down a house and you can build a little city. And it's actually collaborative. If you have multiple children, they can play and with or without headsets. If they don't have the headsets, it's not quite as cool, but they can still play with the toys. But they had some good experiences, and even with asymmetry, even with some of the kids not having headsets. If you want to do a more kind of precision interaction, then pointing becomes important. So again, let's say you have an RGBD camera and you want to pick something that you have just scanned, so you don't really know what the object is. The typical thing would be to do some kind of screen space intersection. And this method here describes volumetric technique that really finds out what the object is that you mean. So if you see that these elliptic markups, they stay in place even though you have only seen in the beginning, you have only seen the front of these toy models, and they are actually segmented out of the scene just from a pointing gesture or some scribbling gesture fairly well, with some clever inference of what the volume is supposed to be that the user was pointing towards. So this is actually my final example. This was the best poster. Again, a very simple idea. If you're doing 3D scanning, for example, from a drone with an RGBD sensor, if you make that scalable today, the world is actually subdivided into kind of a voxel grid, and you're only scanning one voxel or a small collection of voxels at a time. So what can be done is this information can obviously be streamed over a network, and that makes for a very nice and simple telepresence system in 3D, where you can see here on the right-hand side this user who is navigating through a 3D world with an independent viewpoint and can see the 3D scan as it is coming in to communicate with the local participant. Yes, so to wrap up, these were just some sort of hors d'oeuvres for you to interest you in this kind of work. I think these are all very useful technologies. And ISMAR is happening every year, so please consider coming there. We're also submitting your work there on all kinds of levels. We have a big demo show. You can submit a demo, you can become an exhibitor, you can become a workshop organizer. In particular, we're inviting sponsors, obviously. The next instance of the conference will be held in Nantes, in beautiful France, again in October 2017. Paper deadline is August the 15th of March. If you're interested in that, please talk to me about it. Or just go there as a visitor. There are really many ways how our communities could connect, and I hope we will see a strong and continued collaboration between ISMAR and AWE